Thrive Nation, on today's show, it's your opportunity to meet Jenn Lim. That's Jennlim. Now, if you've been spending a lot of time in the Deep South, you might find yourself saying, "Now, who in the Sam Hill is Jenn Lim?" Or if you're from the other side of the pond, you might find yourself saying, "Who is Jenn Lim? She sounds like a great lady, but I've never heard of her before." Well, Jenn Lim is a former key consultant for Zappos and the CEO and co-founder of a great company called Delivering Happiness. Perhaps you've read Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness? Oh, yes, it's great. Well, Jenn Lim helped Tony Hsieh to craft that book. And she joins us today to teach you how to create a culture that is a sustainable competitive advantage for your business.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colin Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C and Z up on your radio, and now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll
Yes,
show you how to get
yes, yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, today is a very special occasion as we're interviewing the CEO and co-founder of Delivering Happiness. Jenn Lim, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing well. I mean, my question is, how are you doing? I'm not sure where your energy is coming from, but that's amazing.
Oh, well, hey, I'm excited. I'm excited to have you on this show because you've had a ton of success. But you're willing to share your tips, and this is fun. A lot of people have success and don't really, they're not as fired up to share their tips for success. So let's start off at the beginning of your career. Well, how did you grow up, and where did you grow up?
I'm a California girl. I was born in Sacramento, and so since then I've been up and down the coast. But my family is from Hong Kong/China, so I have a very layered history of being an immigrant.
And how old were you when you figured out what you wanted to do professionally?
I'm still figuring it out.
Okay, that's fair. How old were you when you when you first figured out, like, hey, this is maybe the first job I want to go after? Or how did your first, how did your career start?
My career started when I did a lot of different things, from working in a shoe store for a sports company, and that was probably one of the worst jobs I ever had, just because there was a lack of respect of there's someone else that's trying to help you on the other end. And all the way to KPMG, and then to Zappos, and to now, like, having Delivering Happiness is the company that I co-founded with Tony Hsieh. So my response to that is just part of understanding what I really wanted to do in life was knowing what I didn't want to do, and going through the things that are really the hard times in life, of losing a job, getting laid off, losing my father. All those things led me up to building a company and a place and community that I want to be a part of.
My understanding is that you joined Zappos in the early days of the company in 2003. Until from that point until the company was later sold to Amazon for $1.2 billion. How did you first meet Tony Hsieh, and then what was it like to work with him?
It's funny. It's like it was back in the .com days. I don't know what your the demographics of your audience is, but if y'all remember, the .com boomed back in the late '90s, and it was at a party. One of my mutual friends with him said, "Hey, you should come to this party. It's like Tony's birthday." And so my friend and I went and met him on his birthday in 1999. And from that point, we became really connected and friends. Just very sense of shared values, shared brain and in some ways heart of how we just look at life. So that's where it started.
What were the initial struggles of growing Zappos? If you can remember those startup days, there's had to be highlights and lowlights. I mean, what was it like working there during those early days of Zappos?
It's very similar to what's going on right now. I mean, the fact that we've been hit by different sorts of recessions in the past, like if you think about any sort of startup, and the lifeline it goes through. So if I can go back to the days of Zappos, of hitting the dot-com bust, and then in 2008 when there was a global recession, and where we are now, it's another different kind of recession in, same but different kind of way. So there are always things that I think in the past that can teach us, because it's basically, in times of difficulty and challenge, it's hard to pay people when you don't have money coming in, kind of thing. And I'm going back to the Zappos days. It's basically being able to go back to what's most important to the company and to the people that are involved, and how do you endure that, because it's very unpredictable as to how things manifest from that point on. So typical stuff of, can't pay people, low sales, not high demand. Everyone's shutting down because they want to save, but also being fearful of what's going on. So what I'm basically getting at is there is no new thing that's going on, other than this is another cycle of what happened in the past with Zappos going through its most difficult challenges and seeing it through based on how best they thought it would be for their people and for their company at the same time.
I've heard that you have said that if done right, culture is a competitive advantage. So when you're growing a company like Zappos, where financially things are kind of struggling, before you got traction and before you gained awareness in the marketplace and before you'd won over your loyal fan base and your tribe, I mean, there was a lot of struggles there. What do you mean when you say culture is a competitive advantage, and how do you build it in a startup?
Yeah, so culture equals people, and competitive advantage is whether you see it in the recent new terms of the word culture, or the fact that if you as a startup, founder, entrepreneur, or even a CEO of any big multi-global national company today, the same thing still applies, is that if you believe in people as being your assets of your company, then it will always be a competitive advantage, in the sense that if you can tap into where people are at any given time, knowing that, there's always going to be technology, there's always going to be AI, there's always going to be the future of work, the unknowns that we cannot predict. But when you think about competitive advantages from Business 101 of any company, it's what are your assets and how do you want to invest in them? So for us as DH, delivering happiness with positive psychology and scientific happiness, for us, the fundamentals go back to a very basic thing. Us being people, and how do we best support and inspire and help them as individuals get to their place of being true to themselves, feeling a sense of progress, feeling a sense of connectedness, and ultimately feeling a sense of purpose. So for me, that's what competitive advantage is, especially now amidst everything that's going on today with COVID. It's more than ever important to understand where we are as human beings and how, as organizations and therefore startup entrepreneurs, support each other in this, because we all want to succeed and we all want to make sure we come out on the other end in a better place.
You decided at some point that it was a good idea to sit down with Tony Hsieh and write a book. And that book is called Delivering Happiness, and it's sold over 1 million copies, and so many great things came from that. What was the process like for writing the book? Was that your idea? Was that his idea? Tell me about the book.
Yeah, well, the book came about because in it's like 10, 11 years ago now, publishers were coming out to him and saying, "Hey, what's your story? We'd like to hear it. Would you like to write a book?" And eventually he said yes. And I was a consultant with Zappos. I've been always a consultant at Zappos. And he said, "Hey, do you want to do this together?" Because I was producing and basically putting out the culture book for Zappos at the time. And I said, "Of course, I would love to be a part of this project as to what this book could mean." So that's kind of how it all came about, without knowing that it would spawn into a movement and another company that Delivering Happiness is about these days. And that's kind of all where it began.
I know you're going to feel good about this. I have purchased at least 10 copies of the book, so I think I've made you about $15. So I'm just going to give myself some credit right there. And you probably enjoyed one nice burrito. But let me tell you this, the book was great.
I was going to say I enjoyed maybe like one little small mocha from Starbucks, but thank you.
Now, in addition to loving the book, implementing the book, and some of the stories in there changed the way I decorate offices. Actually, seriously, with all the swag everywhere. I mean, seriously, that's a real thing. My office has tons of swag now as a direct result of that book. Now, when I read the book, though,
no way.
Oh no,
amazing.
Seriously, if you type in Thrive Time Show and the word Jinx, and you click inside our 20,000 square foot office, you can see it on Google. All of the decor and that whole thing came from this book. I'm not kidding. The whole mindset behind it. I've always swagged out my office. I'm serious. I've always swagged out my office, but I was always like, well, just a little bit. Like a 50 Cent song, just a little bit. But then when I saw Tony's desk with like the Amazon growing from the ceiling and all these green plants everywhere and decor, I thought, oh, that's awesome. And then the idea that you don't want to rush customers off the phone if they have a question, but you want to stay on with them on the phone and marinate and build a relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that it just changed the game. Your book is awesome. So big companies now like Starbucks and Tom's Shoes and Facebook and Cisco, they're reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, can you help me?" What exactly do you do at Delivering Happiness? Is it a kind of an online cult? What do you do at Delivering Happiness?
Well, I'd love to see the images of your office space, because this is kind of like alluding to the point of why we created a company around it. When the book came out, it was successful in its own right, like bestseller lists and all New York Times and all this stuff. But it was just, those are very surreal things to me. What became very real was that there were just people around the world reaching out and just saying, "Hey, how can I do this?" And it was, some people are just like, "There's no way I can do this," because they're like, "Oh, that's just Zappos." But there are others that believed in something that was different, which is, it's not about Zappos. It's about themselves. And it's about their own organization, and it's their own like workspace. Like now more than ever, with like Zoom being a big part of where we are right now with, COVID and everything. The reality is that we all just want to be people, and we all want to be feeling that we can flourish and be ourselves and be helpful to the world. So, I'm just trying to encapsulate the last 10 years of why DH is a company now, is because whether they're like a government of Dubai that came to us, or now like Starbucks or Tom's, or, the companies that you already mentioned, there's a sense of those that are leaders in their own right. And I'm not saying like you have to be CEO or you have to be a VP or anything like that.
Yeah.
Leaders in their own right, feeling that I can make a difference, and I want to know how. I want to understand how I can be true to myself and make a difference in the world. And so that's basically what we do as DH. It's like we have basically created all these frameworks and tools and resources for any individual and any company, no matter what, like now we know, wherever they're in the world, no matter what industry they're in, to be able to create a sense of not just happiness, because we know that can be fleeting in some ways, but a sense of fundamentally like who I am, what do I want to do in the world, and how can I make an impact and help. So that's what DH is today. and creating that within an organizational sense and a company sense and a government sense and a hospital sense, in a way that it takes the academics of positive psychology into real life. And I think we're feeling that more than ever right now.
You are a wizard of delivering happiness. And there's somebody out there that says, I need a wizard. I want a wizard. Where can I get? So somebody out there is on the precipice, Paul. Somebody out there is on the verge right now of filling out a form. They're on the verge of wanting to reach out to you. If they go to deliveringhappiness.com and they want to schedule a consultation, is that how you do it, or do you do it over the phone typically? Do you charge them a fee? How does that work if someone says, I want you to come into my office and swag it out? What do you do?
All those things you mentioned, for sure, come to our website, and I'm always willing to share my email directly, Jenn@deliveringhappiness.com, because for us, we've always been a place to serve and to help. And our belief is that if every organization and every individual serves and helps everyone else, this too shall pass. We will get to a different place, whether we're struggling to figure out as a startup to get funding, or as a small or medium-sized business to pay, our employees, to the largest kind of business that we talked about earlier. The difference is very minimal in the sense of we are, as a global community, smaller than ever to help each other. So what you said, website, deliveringhappiness.com. My email is Jenn, Jenn, @deliveringhappiness.com. And we are here to help you. Anyone that wants that help, needs help, we are here for. So, yeah, that's the biggest kind of give that I think anyone could say and hope, from my perspective, to receive in a way that there's nothing behind this other than a very intrinsic, heartfelt way to help in the world.
Jenn, they sent you a link. They just sent you a link to the office, so you can see our office decor and see.
Oh, no way! Awesome.
The aura and the glory of the office. Now, just so you know, my partner and I, we've built 17 multi-million-dollar companies, and you're responsible for 6 of the office spaces looking like this. So 6 of the physical offices look like this. Paul Hood is a CPA. He runs one of Oklahoma's largest accounting firms. They service clients in almost every state in this great unions. You work with a lot of small business owners.
We do.
What questions do you have for Jenn, the wizard of office culture?
Well, first off, Jenn, I have 4 offices in northeastern Oklahoma, and one of them we just redid.
Oh, yeah.
And
beautiful.
It's a duplicate of Clay's office,
Yes.
so I guess I have you to thank for that.
Yeah.
There
it is.
It's great. Well, Jenn, I'm a businessman,
gosh.
and I teach people how to be successful, and I work with them from a financial standpoint, from a tax standpoint, from a cash flow standpoint. I'm teaching success. And what I've found is and I'd like to get your input on this. An amazingly high percentage of successful, ultra successful people have an immigrant background, or first or second generation, and they have this no quit attitude.
Oh yeah.
So what do you think about that, and how do we teach people that maybe didn't
teach us
come
your
from
hustle?
that?
Yeah, teach us your hustle.
Yeah.
That's an awesome question. I'm so glad that you shared that. I'm actually just looking at the images right now, and I have to say this is pretty amazing what you've created.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of things in my life, but the fact that you've done this, it just feels very authentic. Yeah, so kudos to you for doing all this.
You inspired me.
On the opposite side.
You inspired me. I tell you what, I mean, I've got it's I think probably $70,000 of framed images, probably 50 hours of handwritten quotes on the wall. I mean, when it's all, every picture has a story and has a meaning behind it, and it's powerful. So yeah, so for the listeners out there that want to develop the hustle, teach us the hustle.
Well, I'm currently looking at the Darth Vader mask and a Start Here thing that kind of looks like, like the marble.
By the way, that's an ode to family members of mine who've told people, no, don't get started, because once you do, you can't stop. You'll get addicted to entrepreneurship. Because they're all, some people love entrepreneurship and some people hate it, and some of my family members view it as a bad thing. So that's kind of an ode to them. So there you go.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for owning that.
Yeah.
So, to answer the question about immigrants, this is very interesting to me because, like, I don't know if you saw Hamilton or if you're a fan of this at all, but immigrants, they get the job done. Like, there's a song to that and there's a reality to that. And there's something about, I'm going to get historical here because, America, it has been a place of immigrants. And whether we realize that or not, and I'm talking about every individual along the way, because I come across a lot of people. And when I was in Montana 2 years ago, and I'm not being political at all, I'm just saying I wore a shirt that said, I'm an immigrant. And even though I was born in California, born in Sacramento, a full-fledged U.S. citizen, I wore this shirt because I knew that I'm a descendant of immigrants that came before me.
Got it.
And it was in the face of like other people wearing like MAGA hats, like, Make America Great Again hats and all this stuff.
Yep.
And it was important for me to represent what it took for this great country to be built. And in that moment, I experienced so many things, from the best to the worst. People that are giving me glares and saying like, go back and just like feeling. And this is 4th of July. I think I forgot to add that part of the story.
What a great way to celebrate the 4th of July, being picked on by people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then on the other end, the people that I thought would judge me said, hey, seeing your shirt, I was scared to wear this because it's basically wearing a shirt about families. Families are important to me, so I'm going to wear that. And I had a conversation, and this is like a visual that's going on like in Instagram and all this stuff. But like me with this shirt on next to a gentleman that I've known for many years because this is a Montana dude branch with the MAGA hat on, and we did not agree. Because he's like, you're not an immigrant. You were born here. And I'm like, I am an immigrant because everyone before me was not born here. And therefore, you are an immigrant, too.
I agree. I think we're all immigrants, yeah.
Yeah. And that moment meant so much to everything that we're feeling today in terms of, immigrants, we get the job done. It's because of this work ethic. And this sense of if we can make it work, it can happen. And what I think is on the other side of it, two sides of the same coin, is this lack of values and this lack of alignment and consensus of what it means to get the job done. So it's obviously hard to do this on a global scale.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it in America. We're seeing it right now. We're feeling it right now. But what is most important is within our companies, within our organizations, within our communities. And that's what we can control, because everything outside of that, in some way or another, is hard to control. So I love that question. Thank you for asking that, because this immigrant mentality should be shared by everyone, because in the end, we are all immigrants, especially in the U.S.
Well, Jen, I got a little correction for you there.
Oh, well.
My grandfather was full-blood American Indian, so...
A Native American?
Yes.
Okay.
So he wasn't an immigrant.
Oh.
Now the watering down of my pure blood by my mom's side of the family, they're immigrants, so yes.
Oh, Shonda. It's getting rough. It's getting rough out here. He's trying to divide the audience. Now,
nice.
Hey, real quick here. Now, I got to tell you a story, Jen. I wore a shirt one time on the 4th of July, and it said, I'm a man bear pig. And people came up to me and said, we know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But that's what I am. I'm a man bear pig. And you are so valuable. I want to have you on the show twice. You are just the best. I love what you're doing. For the listeners out there, what's one action step you want all the listeners to take, or what's maybe one? You have the mic. You can drop the mic after you drop the knowledge bomb. What's the one tip you want to give to our listeners?
I think each one of us in this call has already been dropping your knowledge bombs and dropping the mic, and this is what I love the most about these conversations, is being able to share the reality of the situation of where we're at. So if I can just add a little bit more into like what we've already just done in dropping the mic, is being able to express truly who we are and doing. So things they do in harmony is what I think is not just about happiness, it's about what's most effective in change. And especially right now, we're just trying to adapt to an ever-changing life and world. And number one is be true to that self. And the rest, in a weird way, actually unfolds in a way that's more meaningful than ever, to your own legacy and to your own life and loved ones.
Oh, that was good. Jenn, you are a great American. I appreciate you so much for all the work you do. And everybody out there, if you don't have carpal tunnel, check out deliveringhappiness.com. And if you do have carpal tunnel, push through the pain and experience the gain of visiting deliveringhappiness.com. That's deliveringhappiness.com. Check it out today. Now, Thrive Nation, after each and every show, we like to end each and every show with a boom. However, on today's show, because so many of you are looking to claim your Paycheck Protection Program stimulus package from the federal government and the Small Business Administration, I'm going to end the show with a boom, and then I'm going to cue up the audio of Oklahoma's Secretary of Commerce and the Chairman of Region Bank, Sean Copeland, sharing with you how to claim your stimulus package money right now. Again, if you are a small business and you employ people, you want to listen to the rest of today's show. And now, without any further ado, let's kind of end with a boom. 3, 2, 1, boom! And now it is time for me to interview the man, the myth, the former high school basketball legend, Sean Copeland, on the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Clay. I love that you bring back my glory days, brother. I appreciate that.
I have one quick question before we get into this stimulus package and breaking down the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Program. Before we get into all that kind of stuff, how many points per game did you average at the peak of your high school career?
Well, it depends. I went through different phases. You got to understand, we had 3 Division I players on my high school basketball team that was small school, 2A school. So we distributed around. So I was kind of a mid-teens kind of guy. But, you know, I mean, I had a couple of games where we got into the 30s and 40s, primarily because nobody was guarding me, and I would just sit out there and throw up threes, man.
Brother, I tell you, what year were you a senior in high school?
91.
What was
1991.
What was your favorite song from 1991? Your favorite hit where you look back and you go, was it Black or White by Michael Jackson? I mean, were you into Amy Grant, Baby Baby?
No, I did like Amy Grant. Okay. My favorite was absolutely Ice Ice Baby.
Oh, wow.
Vanilla Ice.
That's fair. That's balanced. That's conservative. That's fiscally responsible. And now we get into now you are the chairman of Regent Bank, and you are the Secretary of Commerce and Workforce Development for the state of Oklahoma. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a lot of listeners.
I still have the same musical taste.
Really? You're still rocking Ice Ice Baby?
Absolutely.
That is beautiful. That is what America's all about. So we have a lot of Thrivers today who are kind of hitting the panic button because, according to Forbes, the average American, according to Forbes magazine, 78% of Americans are check to check. 78% of Americans are check to check. So the president announced this program called the Paycheck Protection Program. Can you explain on a basic level how this program is supposed to work?
Absolutely. So So this program is to help people get back to work. And so we're just going to call it PPP here because that's such a long name, but Paycheck Protection Program is a program in which your thrivers out there who are business owners, as long as they have less than 500 employees within their company, and they can be a sole proprietor. It can be a one-person show. They can go into their local bank, and the bank will have received guidance. We just got it literally within the last 10 minutes from the Treasury Department on how to implement this program. And starting on April the 3rd, we will be able to administer these PPP loans. And the loans basically consist of we can loan the business 2.5 times their average monthly payroll. Okay, they take that money. They need to use it to pay 8 weeks of payroll. And then there's going to be another 2 weeks remaining because 2.5 times is going to basically get you to 10 weeks. And with that remaining 2 weeks, they can pay mortgage payment, utilities, rent, interest costs, insurance. They can pay insurance with it. And all of that is deemed okay by the SBA and by the Treasury Department. And as long as they use the money for that, it will all be forgiven, so they will never have to pay the money back. So it's really a pretty remarkable program.
What are the implications of these programs as a Thrive? They want to know, when I get this program, is there a gotcha? Is there a gotcha to this stimulus, to this PPP? Is there
I don't think there is a gotcha. I think there is a part of it that people need to understand that is not very well documented, and that is that for the loan to be forgivable, you have to have the same employee count that you basically had during this time last year.
Yep.
Okay. So what is going to happen is if people have laid employees off, the goal of the federal government is that you bring them all back, that you hire them all back, and you get to the same employee level that you were at a year ago. The challenge is in some instances that's not possible, and in some instances that's not really logical because the business has changed from then until now. So you just have to know that if you have fewer employees now, there could be a portion of this loan that doesn't just go away. You still have 10 years to pay that portion of the loan back, and you pay it back at a very good interest rate. Up to 4% is the highest that portion of the loan can go. So it's a great loan. So you're not hurt by that, but it's not as if you go in and get the money and automatically it just goes away. It's going to depend upon your employee count.
A listener asks, are they lowering the rates on these programs? I heard they're lowering SBA rates. Is there any truth to that? You're on the ground. Do you see what's happening or not happening? Are rates being lowered again?
Okay, so this particular program, the rate is 0.5% fixed for the client, and this is for the forgivable 0.5%.
Whoa!
So you can't get much lower than that. And as we talked earlier, that provides a little bit of challenges to banks because it's kind of hard to make that work. SBA will pay us. The client doesn't pay us anything besides this 0.5%.
How do you make money, Sean? How do you make money when you process this? I know you make very little. How does a bank make money on something like this?
The SBA will pay the bank a processing fee based upon the size of the loan. So we'll receive a fee up front. So if it's a short-term loan, if it's not around for very long, we're okay. It's about a break even. This has a 2-year maturity on it. Yeah. So if the loan is out there for 2 years, it becomes pretty hard to make money. But we're still going to do them for our clients and local folks here in Oklahoma because we want to help businesses. So whether we lose money or not, we're still going to do them.
Is President Trump going to ship you some free suckers for every loan if you don't make any money on these PPP programs?
I hope so. I hope so.
I hope he sends you some
what I
nice
think-
ones.
What I think will happen, though, and this is where I would encourage banks to still do these, even though they're not extremely great financially. I still think it's we need to help each other, and B, it's still a great way to make some new relationships.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, so looking at it long term, I've had a lot of local businesses calling me, and we're going to do their PPP loan, even though, it on its own doesn't make a lot of sense. But that future relationship, that long term relationship, is going to be great. It's an opportunity to meet a lot of great new people.
Hey, Sean, can I tell you a story real quick that involves you? I don't know if I've ever shared the story to you. Years ago,
Sure.
You asked me, you were probably, how old were you when you were running Arkansas Valley Bank? How old were you when you were a young little whippersnapper?
It was a Citizen Security Bank.
Yeah. Citizen Security Bank.
So Arkansas Valley people just got very nervous.
Sorry,
but
Citizen
it was
Security
Citizen
Bank.
Security Bank. And I was probably, let me think about this, probably 26, 27, somewhere in there.
And I'm going to tell you how you built a relationship with me. This is what you said to me. You, a master of positive manipulation. You said, Clay, well, I'm going to try to sound like you, because you kind of are, you are like Tulsa's Joel Osteen. That's who you are. This is who you are. And you said, Clay, why don't you get involved in the chamber and maybe, help us with the Bixby Blues and Barbecue Festival? And I said, no. That's what I said mentally. But then I'm like, oh, okay. So I went out there, and it was like a 2-day event, and I thought at no point is this going to be a good use of my time. Because I didn't pay, the pay was low, Sean. The T-shirts were too small. The pay was low. The weather was hot. The barbecue was good.
It was for charity.
The barbecue was good. The barbecue was good. The shirts were tight. It was hot. I felt like I was in a swamp environment. It was like I was hanging out with Yoda, and you came by and you're like, how's it going? And then I got to be on Channel 8 for like 7 seconds. But let me tell you what happened. I met Michelle Burns there. And Michelle Burns, because I was desperate. Anybody who came by my booth, I was like building sweaty relationships, And Michelle Burns came by. And next thing you know, I shake her hand. She says, why are you here? I said, I'm volunteering. Sean convinced me to do it. I booked one event. Then I got a lady who was planning the Jinx school dances. I booked that one. I got the Bixby high school dances booked. I got the Bixby overnight graduation booked. I got weddings booked. I booked so much. So I'm just saying this statement to you in faith. I know that the kind of people that listen to this show, if they do reach out to you, they're going to give you more than a sucker. They're going to give you some deposits, and they're going to stick with you. Because I'm hearing a lot of our thrivers are telling me their bankers are not calling them back. True story. A lot of people. I've talked to at least a dozen today who says their bankers are not calling them back.
Well, they should, and I think that they're short-sighted if they don't look at the opportunity here. That's a great story you tell, because that is the way it works.
I was pissed at you.
You help one person,
I was so
then they
pissed
tell
at you.
another, then they tell another. Yes.
My wife is the only reason that I got better. Day one, I was so pissed. And I come home, and my wife was like, I've been camping there, been staying there all night. Vanessa's like, how was it? And I'm like, the most beautiful man in Tulsa's Joel Osteen, has convinced me to volunteer to help out the kids or to build a park or whatever the crap we're doing. And I don't care how many kids were saved as a result of this. It's not worth it. And I've got one more day. And she's like, well, with that kind of attitude, you're not going to get any business. So I went out there day 2, and I channeled my inner Joel Osteen. I got my Best Life Now stapled to my forehead. And I went out there and shook some hands like I was Sean Copeland. And bam, I started making some connections. But I really appreciate you, Sean, doing this. But I want the listeners to know you're not making a lot of money by doing this. So this is I want everyone to know that. Okay, so now the next thing is, when is the money going to go in the bank? Assuming somebody does show up and they fill out all the paperwork, they show up, they bring a copy of their 941 quarterly payroll reports, they bring their ID, they bring their articles of organization. If they show up, how long till the money gets beamed into their account?
Okay, so here's how the timing is going to work. So
Yep.
Tomorrow we're going to send out to all the businesses that have applied with us. We're going to send them out a list of what they need, and it's not a lot. It's basically your payroll records, proof that you're in business, your articles. It's not a great deal of information, and we're going to tell them, hey, keep that handy, and then we're going to have a loan officer reach out to you in the next couple of days. The soonest that they can physically apply with the SBA, that we can actually take their application, is April the 3rd. Okay, so I haven't even looked. What is that, Friday?
April 3rd.
So-
And are you going to do is it like a midnight? Are you guys going to be staying open 24 hours a day, doing like a lock-in kind of thing, or what's your strategy?
We're going to handle. See, because you've also got kind of the coronavirus fears.
Oh,
you know?
come on.
And so you're trying to handle this with people feeling safe, and so we're going to handle it all remotely.
Okay.
And obviously we'll meet them at the end whenever we do the closing, but everything will be done, via secure docs back and forth. And so basically, if you think about the earliest that they could apply is the 3rd.
Got it.
The earliest, by the way, and that's for small businesses and sole proprietorships. Independent contractors and individuals who are self-employed can start applying on the 10th.
On the 10th.
On April the 10th.
So contractors
that's very important.
and sole proprietors can apply on the 10th.
This a little bit. I'm just reading you straight off of what we got. Small businesses and sole proprietorships apply on the 3rd. Independent contractors and self-employed individuals, which I'm not sure what the difference is there, apply on the 10th. And I'm literally reading from what they just sent out. So we'll have to get that sorted out, because a sole proprietor and a self-employed individual, I think, are the same. So I'm not real sure what they're talking about.
So let me read it one more time. Small businesses and sole proprietors can apply on April 3rd.
Correct.
And as self-employed people, and who can apply on the 10th?
Independent contractors.
Independent contract. That was my nickname in high school, by the way. Independent contractor. I'm just kidding.
I see.
Oh, okay.
So,
hey, real quick,
so-
I have my riot gear ready, and I know because it's the Corona thing. If I show up with a megaphone, do I have better chances of getting in the lobby?
I'm here to apply for my loan. I'm here in the lobby of Region Bank. Region. Let me in, Sean. Let me in, Sean.
Is that
we
the tip?
would probably double lock the doors.
Chain them.
Okay, we're firing through these now. Now, in the meantime, when people don't have any money and they're waiting for this, because you know this, Sean, you and I talk about saving. We've done videos about saving. We've saved videos about saving. We've talked about saving. I tell people, if you can't save, the habits of greatness are not within you, according to Zig Ziglar. I've told people you got to save. But right now, some people are going, oh, I should have saved. And you go, yeah, you should have saved. And I'm going to throw out some crazy strategies. And if you disagree, it's okay. I just want to get your take, because you're an entrepreneur too, okay? But you're a saver. So you're not going to find yourself in this end-time situation. But there are companies like Kabbage, K-A-B-V-A-G-E, Kabbage, where they're going to put that money in your account right now, but you're going to pay for it. So if somebody says, I can't, I have money right now, because the fastest, Sean, if someone applies on the 3rd, the fastest they're going to get that money put in their account is when?
Probably early the next week. I mean, I don't think it's going to take. This is not the typical SBA program where you have to send it off and wait for them to get back. I think we're going to be able to fund early next week. So I don't think we're talking about a big, long time. The challenge is going to be, we've had about 350 businesses apply with us so far. And so we've got all hands on, and we've got everybody working on it, but it's really just how fast can we get through. We can fund the loans at the time that they sign the documents.
I've got a sound effect here of money going into an account, and you tell me if this is the right sound effect. Let me cue it up here. Let me cue it up here. One-third of the money is now in the account. 42% of the money. 49. 72. I can't give you no more power, Captain. Is that how it happens?
That's pretty close to how it happens. Yes.
Are you just yelling at some guy saying, Scotty, I need more power? And he's like, I got to turn off the shields, Captain. I mean, do you have a Scotty at Regent Bank?
We do. Really, it's fairly simple. We just run it through our accounting department, and we have an electronic debit, and the money goes from us to you. So it's really not quite that exciting, Clay. But we will get them the money. We will get them the money quick.
There's a limited supply, right? People need to apply, and there's a limited supply, right? Because once this stimulus is out, unless another one's coming down the pike, I mean, this is a lot. Since you and I have been alive, this is probably one of the most generous stimuluses, economic, I guess, incentives of all time. I mean, have you ever seen something this big?
No, this is number one. I mean, the whole program is a $2 trillion package. It's the largest ever in our country. And
Wow.
so $349 billion, why they didn't round up to 350, I don't know. But $349 billion has been allocated to this program. And I have received assurances from our U.S. senators that if we run through this money, that they will allocate additional money. I don't think people need to be scared of running out of money, but I do think they ought to be pretty proactive because there's going to be a lot of demand for this program, and it's going to, it's just how long are you going to have to wait? How quickly can we process through these? That's where I think the urgency comes in.
Now, I can say my wife and I bank with Regent Bank, but really I just bank where Sean is. And Sean, since you're an owner of Regent Bank now, you're the chairman of Regent Bank, I can't speak highly enough about your bank, but I like to bank where you are because the way you treat people, the way you treat your team, the way you treat your team, the way you train your team to treat people, you just do things the right way over there, and I appreciate you doing that. Can you tell us just briefly about this? There's two different portions of the stimulus. There is the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and then there's a second portion of the stimulus bill. Tell us about the second portion of the long-term loans and financing being made available by this stimulus.
Absolutely. So the other, and by the way, thank you for banking with us. We've been buddies a long time.
Yeah.
The first program that has already been out for a couple of weeks is the SBA Disaster Loan Program. And this one's a little bit different in that you don't go into your local bank for it. You have to apply online for it. And you go to disaster loan, it's all one word, .sba.gov. And you just click on apply online, you'll register, and then you'll get into the application. And that program is very, very different. You'll put in your financials. You actually don't put in a loan amount. You just put in your financials and your projected financials, in particular, any projected loss that you have going forward. And they will actually give you a number that they would loan you. And these are larger. These are up to $2 million per business. It's a line of credit that lasts 30 years. The rate is fixed at 3.75, and you can advance on it and pay it back. So we really, really encourage all businesses to apply for both. I cannot think of any scenario in this current time when a business wouldn't want to do both, because you can use the disaster loan program for long-term working capital. You can use the PPP program we've been talking about to get 2 months of payroll paid for by the federal government to save you that money and let you even hire some people back. So to me, they're both kind of no-brainers. I think your listeners ought to do both.
And what do you call this long-term loan again? What's the nomenclature there?
The SBA Disaster Loan Program. And you'll see it called EIDL, and I'm looking through my paperwork here to see that economic industry development loan, I think is what it stands for. But it's SBA Disaster Loan, or EIDL, and it's you just go to the website, SBA website. Both of these loan programs, if you just click on the COVID-19, the little scary picture that's on the SBA website. If you click on that, it goes through, and both of those programs are right there. You'll see them both.
Okay, final two questions, and we'll let you get back to having a great day doing things you're doing after work here. So, Josh Wilson, you're with Living Water Irrigation. You're a great guy, a business owner. You did about $1.9 million of revenue last year. It's a fast growth company for you. What question do you have for Sean Copeland?
So the selfish question would be, Sean, can I be number one out of the 350?
Can you process mine first before everybody else?
That's a fair question.
Can I just? I mean, I don't want to be like straightforward.
I've already made several of those promises, Josh, but I think I can get you in top 10.
Oh, top 10. Okay, that's recorded.
Oh.
Hey, that's recorded. Top 10.
Top 10.
Top 10. No, hey, Sean, in all seriousness, I don't want to be like the other people who buying all the toilet paper. So, my question for you would be, so you said it's just a no-brainer for all of our listeners out there to apply for both of these. Do you think that you should rush to your bank Friday morning? Do you think you should make sure whom you're having a relationship? What's the best way? Just so you know, and I'll say this on the air, we're about to start banking with Region Bank because my banker ain't doing nothing. So just to let you know, and that's recorded. So there you go, Sean. That's recorded. My banker won't do anything.
I've been saying this to all the listeners for a long time, and Sean, we have about 500,000 listeners now, and Tim Tebow's agent just signed me for book deals. Esther just signed me, so you'll see me in real bookstores now, Sean. I won't be in my mom's bookstore anymore. But it's interesting. But like I've been telling people, they do things different at Region. So you switch teams.
Well, we're going to. Yes, we absolutely positively. Yeah, I've literally.
I'll hold you
going to
accountable
just
for the
simply
rest of
because
your life if you don't switch.
It's recorded. Sean promised I'm top 10. I'm promising
buddy,
that we're taking our business to Region.
I make a 0% commission. I make a 0% commission, and listen here, Josh. I know how difficult you are and how bad of a customer you're going to be for Sean, and this is payback for the Bixby Blues Festival. You can bring all your big deposits and all your questions.
Sean, I don't think you want my business now, sir. No, Sean, so my question, sorry, back to after all the tomfoolery.
Sorry.
The people out there who can't get their bankers to respond or who don't have the information or
Almost
who aren't
everybody.
being proactive or who are working the bankers' hours of 10 to noon, Monday through Tuesday.
Not on Columbus Day.
So can we – what should those listeners do, Sean?
Yeah, for sure. So you certainly need a banker that is motivated to help you. And I do agree, as an industry, we tend to be a little lackadaisical. And a lot of it is because they've never had to make a payroll. They've never been in business. The sense of urgency is not there a lot of times. So go to regentbank.loan, and apply right there for this PPP program, and we'll get you taken care of. It's really that simple. If you're outside of our market, you got to get to a local community bank where people will take care of you. The truth is, if you're with one of these mega banks, the Bank of America, a Chase, a Citibank, and that's about 65% of the business is with these great big banks. They are not designed to take care of a small business. I mean, that is just a fact. So I would find a local community bank to help you. Now, I would, in terms of Josh prioritizing, I would focus on this PPP program first.
Yep.
Only because, and the real reason is because the program has a deadline to end on June the 30th right now.
Yep.
So in order for you to get the 8 weeks in, you need to make sure that you get funded and get your money by the end of April. So that's kind of the deadline there. So I would put that one first. The disaster loan program is going to be out there for a while.
You're a Christian guy. You're a Christian guy. My final question for you is, and as a Christian man, a lot of churches have reached out to me in the Tulsa area and want to know if this is a good thing for them, and they're also leery of ever working with the government. I mean, essentially, they can get this Paycheck Protection Program money. They can get it. This helps them with their mortgage or their rent or their lease and their payroll for certain qualifying expenditures. But the government's not going to be all up in their business, is it?
No, absolutely not. This is a program where think about most churches. I know there are some very strong online churches, but most churches rely on people, in the sanctuary and for their giving. And so they have to be struggling during this time like everybody else. You might as well let the government pay for 2 months of your payroll plus some additional expenses to help you get back on your feet. And I don't think there's any danger of the government getting in their business. This is really, I've spent a lot of time with our U.S. Senator James Langford on this, and this is really just the most efficient way that the government can figure out how to pump money into the system and get people back to work. It really is that simple.
And folks, if you're out there today, again, you're looking for a bank you can trust, I couldn't recommend Regent Bank more. And if you're a difficult client with a lot of money, I really encourage you to reach out to Sean directly. And mention the Bixby
We love
Blues
all
Festival.
kinds. We love them all.
Oh yeah, no, but seriously, Sean, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being a voice of reason, and I will not be harassing you here for the not so. I'll let you get back to business here for a while, but thank you for joining us in the last couple shows, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks, Clay.
Take care, boss. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Wes Carter, welcome onto the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I have a question. Are you in when you're doing this whole quarantine thing? Have you found yourself watching Milo and Otis, or how do you pass the time as you're quarantined? You know, for inevitably, what are you doing? Are you watching a lot of Milo and Otis?
I have not had any free time at all, to be honest with you, Clay.
Nor have I.
The Congress keeps passing bills, and governors and mayors keep passing orders at such a rate that I'm doing good just to keep up and talk to clients.
That is true. Well, I have 5 questions that came in from a member of the Thrive Nation who is the head of a large church with thousands and thousands of members. So question number 1 is, what is available to me as a pastor through the recent stimulus package from your understanding?
Well, it's still digesting a lot of it. So, I think some of these issues are going to be clarified a little more as regulations come out. But few things. One, it looks like churches are going to be eligible for the payroll protection program, which is the payroll protection loans. So that's the loans that talk about, you can get a loan through the SBA for up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. You have to do a couple of self-certifications that you're going to use it for proper purposes, and you have some economic troubles that are related to the coronavirus that cause you to need the loan.
Yeah.
But that one's probably the biggest one on everyone's radar, because that is the one that also has forgiveness provisions that for an 8-week period after you take that loan, once you show that you've used it for the proper purposes, then they will forgive the amount of the loan used for things like payroll and some other specified costs, subject to some reductions if you end up laying off some of your employees or reducing wages for your employees. But overall speaking, that's the one probably on top of everyone's radar right now because of the forgiveness provisions. Specifically with churches and nonprofits, there's some payroll tax credits that are in the new CARES Act, which is the stimulus bill, that look like they're going to apply to churches. It's called an employee retention payroll tax credit that maybe help out getting some credit against some of the payroll taxes. I know churches, ministries aren't always worried about income tax credits because they don't pay income tax as a nonprofit.
Right.
But some of these payroll taxes they'll want to pay attention to because they do pay payroll tax, just like all the other employers. So that's another one. They've done some expansions on charitable deductions to raise the limits for how much donors can write off against their income for charitable deductions. That'll be favorable to all nonprofits, including churches. There's also, churches need to be paying attention to the law that was passed before the stimulus package.
Got it.
The FFCRA, which is the Families First Corona Virus Response Act. And that is the one that instituted, among other things, but the major provisions were emergency paid sick leave and emergency paid family leave that do apply to churches that are, or ministries that are under 500 employees. So, a lot of laws to digest at once for churches and ministries, but those are the kind of some of the highlights.
And if you're a listener right now and you own a small business or you run a church or a nonprofit, I can promise you will not find a show that will keep you more updated than the Thrive Time show. I just got off of the phone with the state of Oklahoma. With the state of Oklahoma, we have this thing called the Secretary of Commerce. And our Secretary of Commerce is Sean Copeland. And Sean Copeland also owns Regent Bank. And I just got off the phone with Sean Copeland, and I just released the show where he explains that every single person listening to my voice right now, you can apply right now for the funding. You can apply right now for the Payment Protection Program. You can apply right now by going to regentbank.loan. Regentbank.loan. Now, if you're not in Oklahoma, if you're not in Texas, if you're not in New York, it doesn't matter where you are in this great country, you can apply right now at regentbank.loan. And Sean Copeland, who is the president of the bank, who is responsible for administering and giving out this government subsidy, this government stimulus, he said we can count on having funding in approximately 11 days. Now, Paul Hood, you're a CPA. I'm sure your clients are all calling you from coast to coast right now, wanting to know how they can claim the Payment Protection Program money that's allocated for them.
Right.
And my understanding, again, is it's 2.5 times your monthly payroll.
Correct.
Is what's going to be put into your account, and you do not have to pay it back if you use it for payroll and certain qualifying things. What kind of questions are you getting?
Well, we're getting a couple of things. One, how do we apply? We're getting questions that we're digging through to try to get the answers. If they forgive the loan, is that now taxable income? Because typically if you receive an economic benefit from a debt forgiveness, that's income. We're getting questions on how do they relate between the credits for the employee retention tax credit. How does it relate to the emergency, the $2 million funding?
Yep.
And is there an offset there? Those kind of things. And then realistically, and I deal personally with about 8 different banks.
Yep.
And I've had a couple of the banks, and they're excited about it, but there's some things out there that they don't know. But basically what we're telling our clients is here's what we want. Let's put together the spreadsheet, the information, have it in a format that we can modify, and just be ready to hit the ground running.
Now, again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to your normal bank if you're listening right now, but I can tell you there's not a lot of banks out there that are owned by my partner, Dr. Zellner, that are owned by Sean Copeland. Not a lot of banks where the person who runs the bank is actually your state's Secretary of Commerce. Not a lot of banks run by someone who's spending time directly with the governor. And Regent Bank right now, they can process this for you right now if you go to regentbank.loan. And so far I've had thrivers calling their banks, and no banks seem to know what's going on except for Regent Bank. So I can just tell you that's because they have the inside scoop there. Now, Wes, we have another question here from a thriver. And this is a pastor of a big church. He says, is there unemployment insurance provided for my church employees that might have to be laid off during this period of time in the stimulus package?
Well, there's some confusion about that a little bit right now in the law because the way the law was worded. Nonprofits really fall into usually one of 3 categories. So you're talking about nonprofits that pay unemployment tax, nonprofits that have some sort of self-insuring program with the state. A lot of times they'll get reimbursed up to a certain percentage under a self-insured program. And then you have nonprofits like churches that are usually exempt from unemployment laws. So where the confusion comes in is they've expanded the self-insurance provisions where normally a nonprofit would get 50% of what it spends back on its unemployment premiums if they participate in that self-insurance kind of a program. Doesn't explicitly apply to churches because most churches wouldn't have elected to participate at all. But there is some new law in the stimulus bill that provides for additional federal unemployment of $600 on top of the normal state amounts of benefits. So I think what everybody's trying to wrap their head around right now is whether churches, ministers, employees that would otherwise be exempt from unemployment, if they're going to qualify for that extra $600.
Got it.
And also there's some issues where the president can declare a major disaster. It sounds funny saying there's not a major disaster everywhere right now.
Right.
But he can declare a major disaster, which is different than a national disaster, which allows people to opt in to unemployment insurance under the disaster unemployment assistance program. which is a separate thing. So it's a lot of moving parts there right now, and I don't know until we get some regulations there's going to be clarity on exactly how this will apply, because states are going to have the option as well to expand their unemployment programs. So some of this might be on a state-by-state basis as well.
This is an interesting question for you, Wes. You know, Wes, typically nonprofits are organizations that don't produce a profit. Is every American business now a nonprofit?
Yeah. Well, no. Nonprofits is...
Oh, it's too soon. Sorry, too soon. Too soon. It's just, we're all going through this. We don't all qualify as a nonprofit right now.
No, unfortunately not.
Oof, it's too soon. Now, okay, they got two final questions here. One for Paul, and one for you, Wes. Okay, and then we'll wrap up today's show here. Next question here for you, Wes. It says, this is from a pastor. He says, I hear there are other loans under something entitled titled EIDL. EIDL. How is the EIDL different from the PPP stimulus package? What is the EIDL and what is the PPP? What are those two different stimulus packages? And the Thriver wanted you to explain that to him. And then, Paul, I'd like for you to provide extra clarity if you can. Sure. So let's go with Wes first.
So the EIDL is an economic injury disaster loan. It's a separate kind of loan through the SBA that is providing additional funds for businesses, some nonprofits that have suffered, they show they're suffering an economic injury from the coronavirus-related disaster, of course, what we're talking about now. The major difference is the EIDL loans don't have any forgiveness provisions like the PPP do. The EIDL loans are going to be designed for more of a traditional long-term note, even though they're going to be at a favorable interest rate from the SBA.
They're like 30-year loans. 30-year loans at an interest rate underneath 4% is my understanding. I mean, these are typically in commercial loans. You get loans for 5 years or 7 years. Sometimes if you really know a good banker, you might get 10 years. It's unheard of to really get a 15-year, but a 30-year at under a 4%.
30 years. Yeah, 3.75% for for-profits, 2.75% for nonprofits.
Whoa.
Yeah, favorable interest rates for sure. There still is, again, just the way some of these laws have been worded. I think one of the major things we're dealing with right now with churches and ministries is whether they qualify for these EIDLs. There's conflicting information out there from the SBA and some other, information that either religious organizations are excluded because there's some regs prior to the stimulus that religious organizations aren't qualified applicants under these immediate disaster loans.
Yep.
But we're also getting some guidance that the law, as it's passed in the stimulus bill, which doesn't specifically exclude religious organizations, might override that. And so I've even looked at the SBA loan application. The EIDL loans, by the way, you apply straight with the SBA on their website, where the PPP loans, as we talked about, you go to your bank to apply to the bank for those. But the SBA application does not ask anything about being a religious organization or a church or a ministry on all the boxes you have to check to see if you are excluded as an applicant. So we're hopeful that churches are going to be able to apply for those EIDL loans. And also, just kind of as a suggestion for listeners, if you're planning on even maybe applying for either one of these loans,
do it now.
This is something, jump on it, get it done now, because you're going to save your spot in line. And if it gets approved, you're not obligated to take it. But if you decide later, you're going to have thousands of people in front of you if you don't getting ready to apply.
If you have a mind that works, and it's a sound mind and a mind that is able to process the words coming out of my mouth, and you do not go to regentbank.loan right now and apply for this PPP program, this paycheck protection program, there's got to be something wrong with your head. You've got to do it now, because whether you and I agree philosophically or ethically with the shutdown, whether we agree churches should be shut down, and whether we believe in this quarantine or not, it's here. And so we need to make sure we're putting ourselves in a good situation to be financially solvent. Paul, final 60 seconds before we have to go interview our next guest during kind of this crisis edition of the Thrive Time Show.
Sure.
What other commentary do you want to provide about the PPP, the payment protection, the paycheck protection program, or about this additional program?
Well, a couple of things. One, there is a finite pool of money for the PPP. It's $377 billion, I believe. Anybody with employees really should apply for this. And what they do is they've picked a date, February 15th. That's their measuring period. And whatever the level of payroll you've had at that point is what you have to maintain. You can use it for not only for paying your employees, but providing a place for them to work, your rent, your interest on your mortgage, your utilities. And it's like Wes said, it's through a bank. And there's 1,800 of these lenders out there. The EIDL, that is straight with the SBA, like Wes said. There is a 30-year loan provision with that.
Yep.
With the PPP, it's a 10-year for what doesn't get forgiven. The EIDL is what's called for working capital. That's not just for payroll. It's everything that you have to maintain to keep a business. And the main thing that we're doing for our clients is we've put together a comparison of the two, and we're still adding to it as things come out. But the big deal is we got to figure out how they interact. You know, if we do this one, do we not get this one? That kind of things. Do we miss out on which one's better to take the credit or take the money? But like you say, anybody who has an employee needs to jump on the bandwagon and at least apply for this. But you go through a bank, so there's still normal underwriting requirements and all of that.
And I would encourage you, everybody, go to the show notes on today's show. I've put the links there where you can apply for everything right there on the show notes. Do it now. And if you know somebody who's self-employed, share it with them now. Wes Carter, thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show.
It's my pleasure.
All right, and folks, if you're out there needing legal advice during this tough time, check out wintersking.com. That's wintersking.com. Paul Hood, thank you with Hood CPAs for joining us. Paul Hood with hoodcpas.com. Thank you for joining us. And Wes, you take care.
See you, Wes.
All right. See you guys later.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!